Sounds good. Well, welcome everybody. If we haven't met, I'm Kelly Wilhelme, Director of Marketing at Weidert Group. I've been with Weidert for coming up on 11 years. Most of my time in this role. Before that, I was on the client services team, so been using HubSpot a long time. And I'm excited that we have Kyle Denhoff with us today. He is Senior Director of Marketing at HubSpot. He spends his time, he has told me, in content land, so we have that in common. Mostly on the demand gen and audience growth side of things at HubSpot. So Kyle, I will let you introduce yourself here, but wanted to at least let everybody know that we've been following you for 6+ months now, because you've been very involved in HubSpot's rollout of the Loop Marketing Initiative since inbound in Labor Day. So I can't believe that was over 6 months ago already. So yeah, if you just want to give us any other background on yourself, and then we'll start talking about the loop and the express phase.
Awesome. Thanks, Kelly. Thanks, Mary. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. As Kelly mentioned, I'm Kyle. I'm a senior director of marketing at HubSpot. I've been with HubSpot for about 7 years, very much focused on acquisition to support our sales-led motion. So, supporting the blog teams, YouTube teams, newsletter teams, campaign teams to try and drive leads for HubSpot. And today, what we'll do is we'll walk through our new Loop marketing playbook. As Kelly mentioned, we launched this at Inbound last year. We're moving from the old inbound model to this loop model, and I'll be able to share with you kind of the phases of that playbook as well as some of the plays we're running internally at HubSpot to support our marketing team. So, up front, I'll do a little bit of an intro. I'll go through the loop framework and the express phase and some of our internal case studies, and then Kelly and I'll just jump into a conversation. Kelly, do you want me to start sharing?
Yeah, go for it. While
Cool.
you're doing that, logistically, I'll ask you one selfish question because I'm curious and I'm sure others are too. What
Sure.
is the what's the big, like, I guess the first question that you get from people when you talk about the loop marketing? Like, what's been the most common question people ask you?
Yeah, it's why now? Why are we shifting to this new method? And as I walk through it, I mean, the foundation is I think we all had run a similar playbook for the last, gosh, 5 to 10 years, where we were running the SEO blogging playbook, social media posts, and then digital ads to grow our business. And over the last 3 or 4 years, the way buyers are finding products and services online has fundamentally changed. And I think we all actually see that ourselves. Before lunch, I probably check Gmail, YouTube, listen to a Spotify episode, and I'm on the way to the gym. And then I may search something inside ChatGPT or Claude later in the day to find some information. So we had done a ton of customer research, and then we saw it in our own internal numbers that the way people were finding us was changing. And so we knew that we needed to come up with a new method. And so Loop is that playbook. We're saying the shift has happened over really the last 3 or 4 years, and now we have a playbook that we're ready to share with everyone.
Yeah, sounds great. And I think we feel that ourselves too as buyers, like ourselves, we buy stuff and the way that we are behaving has certainly changed since like AI came on the scene at 3 years ago, 3+ years ago now. So
Yeah.
yeah, I agree 100%. I'm not surprised that that's the most common question we get. So yeah, let's dive in. Let's have you share your screen and give us a little background on the
Sure.
loop, and what makes it more effective than the traditional inbound model.
Sure. Um, can someone just give me like a quick thumbs up? Kelly, thumbs up that we're
Yep,
sharing
we can
there?
see it.
Awesome. So, as I mentioned, I'm Kyle. Been at HubSpot 7 years. I've worked in a bunch of different industries. Before HubSpot, I was actually at a national healthcare provider, Fresenius, and I've done a lot of work for small businesses, Hampton and The Hustle before they joined HubSpot. So familiar with how to run the different content playbooks at the different stages of a company. And today I'm going to walk through the Loop playbook that we launched, and specifically the Express phase, because it's really the beginning of your marketing playbook going forward. So I just talked about it, but no doubt we're all feeling a little pressure that inbound has been disrupted internally in our own dashboards, traffic's dropping. We're noticing if we're running digital ads, the costs are going up. Certainly, my social feeds are a lot noisier than they used to be. I think it's getting more challenging to market your business and drive sales. So over the last couple years, we developed this loop marketing playbook. So we're going from more this like linear inbound motion where a lot of us had run the SEO and blogging playbook for a long time. You look at the keyword, you cluster the keywords, you identify your content strategy, you write your blog posts, and ultimately bring inbound traffic to your website. But because the internet has changed, right? People are giving their attention to different applications. They have AI to support them. At HubSpot, we've moved to more of this always on model. So instead of running, big campaigns that fill the funnel in a short period of time, the loop is meant to represent always on. So we're using AI at every phase of our marketing funnel and our program. So our content writers are using AI to help them. Our conversion rate optimization marketers are using AI to help them. So the purpose of Loop is really how do you build more of this always on engine to help your business? Today, we're going to talk about the express phase, as I mentioned, which is the kind of the starting point of the always on. The reason express is so important is I'm sure we may have all faced this at some point in our careers, but we do a lot of brand strategy work. We have the beautiful logo, the beautiful website, the iconography, the colors. All of this lives in a Google Drive somewhere, and we can't get our marketers to like use it. And our sales team certainly probably uses a different template. And we have this back and forth of like, how do we stay on brand? Well, the cool thing is with the AI tools that we're starting to build, you can do that brand foundation work and you can actually leverage AI to have more consistency across all your marketing communications. So that's what we're going to talk about. So express who you are is the starting point. Then you go into the bottom right. Tailor is how do we use AI to make sure our messages are tailored for our customers. Amplify, I mentioned kind of the old SEO blogging playbook. We were very reliant on organic search as one channel. You'll see in the playbook if you go to loopmarketing.com and read more about it. Amplify is about using multi-channel plays. So, are we blogging? Do we have a newsletter? Are we working with creators? Do we have a paid program? And how do we bring more of a balanced mix to our business? And then evolve is that always on I mentioned. So imagine you send, gosh, 10 emails in a given month. And we used to have to wait to the end of the month to look at our unique open rates for each subject line. Well, now AI is going to be able to tell us every week what emails are getting the highest open rate so that we can write better subject lines going forward. We don't have to wait for the month end report or the quarterly report. We have the tools built in to help us. So the foundation piece is, and where we're going to spend most of our time today is how do you define who your target customer is? At HubSpot, we're using ICP, Ideal Customer Profile. And then how do you build a brand style guide? And how do you make sure that that's consistent across all your marketing communications? Those are the two things that we feel are like most important to running this playbook properly. So the first is creating that ICP. Now, ICP, people have different definitions of ICP. It's really more of like a B2B term. I think in B2C, you would say persona. I'm a guy in his 30s who has a 16-month-old and likes to golf and likes the Buffalo Bills. I know there's football fans on the call. That would be more of a persona. And ICP is more B2B focused. What industry do you work in? What's your title? How long have you been working there? What are the pain points that your business is facing? We want to be able to determine what all those inputs are for our marketing. The way that we do that at HubSpot, which is pretty cool, and you can do this at smaller businesses as well. I've done this for a startup, but you talk to your customers all the time and you talk to them on the phone, you talk to them at events. A lot of us are doing remote conversations with Google Meet or Zoom. All of those conversations are data points. And a lot of these tools right now, Zoom and Google Meet included, will record the transcript for you from your conversation. That becomes an input into the persona and the person we're trying to reach. Some of us may have like sales tools that record our call transcripts. And then obviously we're doing our keyword research and market research to support us. But all of that data can now go into AI tools, and we can say to the AI tools, whether it's HubSpot or another tool that you have access to, what are the top pain points for the 5 customers I just spoke to last week? And then it can start to surface what are their pain points, what's their job description, what industry are they in. And that's what you're seeing on the far right here. This is Growth Gabby. This is actually HubSpot's ICP. And our teams gathered all that information, and then we used our AI tools to kind of get the insights from all of that data to kind of set the foundation for our marketing. Who are we trying to reach? The second piece is the one I mentioned where a lot of this lives in the Google Drive and we have inconsistencies. The great thing about building your style guide now is you can load your style guide into these AI tools, whether it is HubSpot, whether it is Canva. You can load in your color palette, your fonts, your iconography, your photos. All of that can go into these tools. And then when you're starting to write an email or write a web page or write a social post, the AI tools can almost be your quality assurance and make sure that it's on brand. The way that we create our style guide at HubSpot is everything comes from a customer insight. So we do a lot of the customer surveys, the competitive research, the call transcripts. We use an AI tool of choice, and then we start to figure out how do we want to talk about ourselves? What's our messaging look like? What do our brand guidelines look like? And then we load those final assets into the tool. To give you a tangible example, our brand marketing team came up with a whole tone of voice guide and they loaded that into HubSpot so that when our team is writing their emails, there's a built-in editor who's like helping with word selection and tone of voice and making sure that we're warm and conversational. And so we're leveraging AI to almost support our consistency across all those touch points. Um, the last piece that I wanted to mention, so we have our audience, right? We define our audience, we define our brand style guide. The last is okay, now I want to run a campaign. One of the cool things that we've started to do at HubSpot, on the right here, you're going to see our podcast Marketing Against the Grain. Our CMO is the host, his SVP is the co host. He was the former CMO of Zapier, but they talk about the future of marketing. And it used to be incredibly difficult to have to produce a YouTube video, write a blog post, write an email, create an offer, create social media clips. It still is a bit challenging, but AI inside of HubSpot and other tools is actually helping us do this more consistently. So imagine that we record this conversation and Kelly and I have the full transcript from the conversation we have, and we want to turn that into a blog post. Well, the transcript is a great source of information. I can use HubSpot or another AI tool. I use Claude a lot personally in my day to day, and it can take the transcript from this conversation and help us build an outline for our blog post. And then work with our writer on how do we actually develop a blog post that we know meets Google's EAT guidelines that we hopefully will be able to rank going forward. Our team today, what they do is they have guidelines for each content type. So they have guidelines for social clips, guidelines for offers, guidelines for blog posts. And what we're able to do is create one YouTube video with 2 experts, take that transcript, and then our content teams can what we call remix it into these other formats. And you get a lot of consistency across the board, which is what we're going for to help grow the visibility of our brand. So those are the 3 layers that I think Kelly will dive into, but identify your audience, build your style guide, and then how can you actually use AI to bring that out into the world. The last thing I have for this group is inside of HubSpot, we're building this into the platform. So we have a tool called Brand Identity. And when you go into your HubSpot portal, you'll be able to load the inputs I talked about in there. So who is your target audience? What are their industries? And then what are some of the other elements of your brand style guide? So I'll play the video and you'll start to see what's included here. So logos, colors, your web theme, your font. You can see tone of voice information here, like personality, your mission statement, and then industry information, because we want to make sure that our copy and our marketing materials have context around what we offer. So what'll end up happening is you'll do all the upfront work and you'll load that into HubSpot. And then when you go to write your first email inside of HubSpot or your first blog post, the AI tool will pull from this data set to make sure that everything you're creating is on brand to keep that consistency across your messaging. So overall, we're very excited. Loop is something where we've been actively building. The Express phase is something we really put a ton into over the last year to kind of rebuild our foundation as a business. And I'm happy to share how we're using AI day to day with the team.
Very
Cool.
cool. We've got I don't think we have any questions in the chat yet, but I'll just remind people too, if you want to ask Kyle a question, he and I are gonna just have a little chat here that you could be a fly on the wall, but we would actually much rather that you ask questions yourself too. So feel free to put them in the chat and I can help moderate, or if we get to your question and you want to come off mute and onto video and ask a follow-up or clarify something, you're welcome to do that too. So while people are thinking of that and chiming in, Kyle, we
Yeah.
could just keep chatting. I think my first question after like seeing kind of the infrastructure that you peeled back the curtain a little bit on that brand kit demo. Um, I know there's all this hype these last few years about AI and marketing and how some everything from the side of AI is breaking marketing to AI is gonna put marketing agencies out of business. Are we allowed to say that that has been
Yeah.
put
Yeah.
out there? I'll say it's a myth, selfishly, and also just realistically, that's a myth. But what's your take on when you think about how teams? I think this is partly why the express phase is so important and also just interesting as well. Is like when you think about having a strong foundation for AI tools.
Hmm.
Um, that's where to me like that brand identity and like what you were describing as brand identity was much more robust than how we've typically thought about it in the past. In the past, it was more like you mentioned, that logo, those visuals, that brand platform, if you will.
Sure.
But I think this concept of marrying it up with your ICP and personas, if you're more on that B2C side, um, is is really kind of where like the power of the loop comes into play. So do you want to just pull on that thread a little bit and maybe what's
Sure.
your take on why everything with the loop starts with Express?
Yeah, yeah, I'm with you. My LinkedIn feed is full of claims and promises for AI. I think, honestly, I think we're all still figuring it out. Our team, I think the thing that is most important here that we remind ourselves is like AI is still a computer program and it's only as good as its inputs.
Yeah.
And so a lot of marketers may plug things in. Maybe you're talking to ChatGPT or Claude and you're saying, help me write this brief or help me put together this messaging framework or help me write this email. But it's going to give you a fairly generic answer based on, what it knows is like best practices that it was trained on from information on the web. Where it starts to get really impressive and where we see the performance go up is the inputs I just showed within the brand kit. You're feeding it information like, here's who I'm speaking to, right? So it has context around who is the audience. And it has more information about that audience. So it knows their industry, their job, their pain points. You're also going to enter things like please make sure we talk about it through this tone of voice or this angle or this lens. And then the last layer of like the visual ID that you mentioned. But you have to get really granular. Like even with Claude or even in HubSpot, you have to keep giving it the inputs of like, no, this is my secondary color in the style guide. So my primary button needs to be this color. My secondary button needs to be that color. And here are my H2s and here, like it can't form a fully developed campaign or plan for you. You have to give it the inputs and train it on really all your performance data and all your customer market research so that it starts to gather the context to then give you a good answer or input. So that's really what we're preaching is like you have to still do all the upfront work, give that to AI, and then you'll actually be a more effective marketer because when you're creating something, it's on brand, it's the right tone of voice, it's talking to the right persona. You don't have to have as many iterations, and that's where the loop concept comes into play is it's not campaign based where we're developing something for 30 days, we're getting approvals from everybody, and then it's going out and then we shut it down. We're in this always on motion where we've already done the foundational work. We're confident our teams can write blog posts in our tone of voice because AI is their editor, and we can start to ship a lot more quickly.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. One thing we hear from a lot of teams is that, and we've experienced ourselves too, admittedly, is, AI sounds really exciting, but to
Mhm.
try to adopt it at scale can get messy really quickly. So can you share any like lessons you've learned inside HubSpot or from other HubSpot customers about how they overcome that struggle when they start trying to implement AI assisted marketing?
Yeah, yeah. I can answer that question. I also saw Eric asked about like Claude integration with HubSpot. So I would say at the individual level or like individual productivity level, that's where it gets a little crazy. Where it's like, I'm a heavy Claude user. I build custom Claude skills for myself. I try to build custom Claude skills for my team. But I know other marketers at HubSpot are doing the same thing. So I've run into like a couple instances where it's like four of us were like, oh, I built HubSpot's tone of voice skill. And it's like, well, we don't need four different ones. We probably just need one that's consistent from our brand team. And so that bubbles up. And then we go to the brand team and say, hey, can we get one of these skills and have all of our marketers install it? So I think at the productivity level, that's when it gets a little crazy. What's nice about at the like marketing department or the company level is do the upfront work and then load it into your systems of record. Like all of our marketers that go into HubSpot to build our emails and write our blog articles, we've loaded those foundational materials into that system so that everyone's consistent on a daily basis. Similar with Canva, we're big Canva fans. We have the Canva integration. You go into Canva, you have the color palette, the logos, the templates, the whole thing. We know folks can be more consistent because that's the system of record for the team that they're all using. So I would say it kind of depends on the altitude. I would say, like, for individuals, we all work a different way. So we kind of take the approach of like, do your thing. Like, we'll give you the tools, do your thing. But when it comes to something that's going to be customer facing and that's going to go out, you need to use the system of record. And those all have, pre-built inputs that are approved by the team. Eric, to your
Yeah.
question around did we plug Claude into HubSpot? We do for data analysis. So the Claude connector is really helpful where say I was actually using this morning with Claude. Say you have just like a huge data set or you have all this information in your CRM and you're interested in like um, how many deals did we create last month or last quarter? How many of them progressed? How many of them closed? What was the revenue output? You may have a report inside of HubSpot that like you can go through yourself and pull all the insights. But what the Claude connector does is it can go to your report, understand all the data, and then be able to serve you some insights and answers more in a summary format. So that's how we use it as like larger data sets. We try to have Claude almost be our analyst for us.
And I know you mentioned we have a question from Greg in the chat too. Greg, we'll get to that next. But
Yeah.
just a follow up to that, Kyle. Like I know you mentioned using the tools to improve, like for example, you said your email open rates, like
Mm.
instead of waiting till the end of the campaign, it's always looking at all of your emails that are going out and making suggestions. Is that a case where you could use something like Claude, that connector, to do that as well?
Um,
Or is that something more
I'd
that's
have
like
to
being
one.
built inside HubSpot and it's coming?
I'll say
Spoiler.
this. I'll say this. I think when you start to log into HubSpot, you're going to start to see recommendations based on your data, which is going to be incredibly helpful as soon as you
Yeah.
log in. Yeah, you're not going to have to go to another place for it.
Okay. And Eric asked a follow up too about how accurate Claude has been in analyzing data. He said he's had issues where AI tools get the numbers wrong. I've had that experience as well, Eric.
Yeah, yeah, same, same. I think we fact check everything. It's not perfect yet.
Yeah. So sometimes I try to think of it as like, can it help me directionally? And then, like you said, with that extra layer of anything that's customer facing, like you always got to double check it. It kind of depends on how you're trying to use that data, I think.
Yeah, and the models are, I mean, they're improving rapidly, rapidly. So it's like, they may launch something next week and it may be perfect. So that's the thing is I think it helps you get from point A to point B a lot faster. And so we still like proceed with caution, but they're improving. And the other thing I just noticed the other comment here around perplexity, all of the LLMs do things a little differently. Like Gemini's Nano Banana is really impressive. If you're like building a style guide and you want to do like a photography mood board or a graphic mood
Mm.
board, incredible tool for that. I really enjoy OpenAI for ChatGPT for data analysis, and then Claude for more like data dashboards. So we'll take Excel files, load them into Claude, and then it can actually turn it into a reporting dashboard. So you have data visualizations to look at. So I think we're all, like I mentioned, we're all still figuring it out and tinkering with the different tools. But as they get better, we're building things directly in the HubSpot platform so that you don't have to hop from one to the next.
Yeah, I do think that's a huge advantage as well. Just like I know 11 years ago when I started using HubSpot, it was more in the early stages of marketing automation. And I was like,
Hmm.
oh my gosh, you can automate emails. Like you can, things that I
Yeah.
wish I could have done coming from more like HR, internal communication. And so it's just I think we're kind of at that stage now where like we've we know there are thousands of tools we could choose from, but I'd
Hmm.
rather they be in one that I'm already using, right? So I think that's I think at Inbound last year when HubSpot really focused on a lot of native AI features in the platform, that was really exciting to me as a marketer. Is I can now do a lot of this stuff right in my HubSpot, not having to go figure out what's the right tool for all these things.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. We kind of announced a initiative we're launching more around kind of the future of the platform, and we firmly believe that the context that the AI has is your competitive advantage, meaning your customer records, your prospect records, all your past deals, like everything that lives in the CRM layer is a data point for the AI, right? Whether
Hmm.
you're doing marketing or sales or reporting. And so what we're trying to do is build a platform that essentially has all of that data as your foundational layer and gives that context to the AI that's inside the tool to help make recommendations and decisions for you. And I think that's really important because I do think at some point we're going to move past hopping from 4 or 5 different tools to help us with things to one tool that's going to have access to the data it needs to. And that's what we're trying to build at this point. But yeah, I guess to give you a tangible example on this, it's more in our tailor phase of the presentation. So hopefully folks have been to HubSpot.com. They've read the HubSpot blog, maybe downloaded an offer. Thank you for downloading offers. It helps me with my lead goal. But what ends up happening after that is you go into like email nurture flows. And based on your qualifications, we essentially determine if you're qualified or not. Our internal email automation team has figured out how to take all the data in our HubSpot CRM and write thousands of one-to-one emails for prospects, thousands of them. It'll say, "Hi Kelly." It knows your location, your business, your job, and it'll write a personal email for you. It took us, I think the team presented like 4 or 5 months to get the email perfect because the AI tools weren't there yet. But now that they're much improved, that team is sending automated emails on behalf of sales that are personalized one-to-one to every prospect, and we're seeing the response rates go up significantly. So we're trying to build those types of things into the platform for teams, and I think you'll start to see that over the next couple of years.
Yeah, we have played with that dynamic email feature a bit.
Yeah.
We haven't mastered it ourselves, but we've been exploring it, and it is really promising. And I think it's even better now than it probably was even 6 months ago. So, yeah, if you haven't checked out the Taylor phase of the Loop webinars, go to loopmarketing.com, and check out that specific. There's a recorded webinar about that specific phase as well that'll help you understand what Kyle was speaking to there. Um, Greg's got kind of an existential question in the
Mm,
chat about the idea that AI and changing buyer behaviors are creating kind of a new arms race for advertisers, so like companies who are, wanting to advertise and get out there. And
hmm.
also, obviously, as an agency who helps clients with those things. So do you have any insight into that, I guess, big unknown is there's a lot of
Yeah.
unknowns with AI, but that is one, like, I don't know what your take on that is.
It is a big question. I think about it a lot. I'm actually going to talk about it at the conference a little
Oh,
bit.
perfect.
So,
Shameless plug. Experience and none
shameless plug,
coming
yes.
up.
So, I'll say like we just launched Loop at Inbound last year, but we've been building it probably the last 3 to 4 years. So, I mentioned at the top of the call, like my job at HubSpot is to generate demand through our content funnels, and our blog was incredible for a very, very long time, and still is. But we faced a ton of headwinds, which I'm sure everybody's facing, where you're just seeing organic search traffic drop. And when that happens, as a business, you're like, well, I still have my revenue goals I need to hit. Still need to drive pipeline for my sales team. So you invest in paid to try to help you close that gap. But when everyone's doing that, because everyone's facing the headwinds, right? They're not getting the clicks to their website that they used to get, then the CPMs go up. So at that point, you're like, oh my goodness, my traffic's going down and I'm paying more, and pretty much in the same place. So we were facing the same thing. And we started to do some experiments like 3 years ago where we wanted to open up what we call new media channels. And we started to ask customers, like, where do you spend your time? And we also did some market research. We used some tools. I really like SparkToro, super cool tool, to kind of show
We use
you
that too.
where. Yeah, it's a great tool, and it shows you where your audience is spending their time online. So it'll show you what podcasts they listen to, YouTube channels they visit, social media accounts they follow, Reddit subreddit threads. And so we did all this research and then we started to launch some experiments. So one of the first experiments we launched was on YouTube. And we were like, well, it's known that it's a very large search engine. It came out, I think Nielsen mentioned YouTube passed Disney and Netflix as the top streaming platform in the US on household televisions. And Edison mentioned that it's the top podcasting platform for Gen Z, I think. So they're listening to podcasts on YouTube as opposed to Spotify, Apple Podcasts. So we did our own research, talking to customers, and the market research was like, yo, everybody's leaving and they're going to places like YouTube. And so we decided to invest in a YouTube channel. And we knew it was going to be a long-term investment to see if we were able to generate viewership and content leads through that channel. Took about 9 months till we really saw the returns. But now YouTube's one of our biggest demand channels at HubSpot. I know we're operating at a different size and scale. At this point, we have 11 YouTube channels,
Yeah.
all driving demand for the business because we know our customers are there and we're able to convert those viewers. So, Greg, I know that's a long answer. I think where we've gone as a business is we need to be multi-channel. And we're trying to build a system that allows us to do that. And I mentioned in my presentation, like taking a YouTube video and remixing it into a blog post, an email, and an offer. That's how we're doing it. So that we don't have a massive content org having to create content across all channels all at once. That's
Yeah.
expensive and incredibly hard to do. But if you create an anchor, like a newsletter or a blog or a YouTube channel, that becomes foundational material that you can use elsewhere.
Yeah, I love that idea too. And just to bring it back a little bit to the express phase as well, you
Mhm.
mentioned, Kyle, some of the things that go into that like brand kit, that style guide. And one of the things that caught my ear was having messaging examples and guidelines by channel. And so I think when it
Mhm.
comes to that idea of remixing something for YouTube, like you might have in your style guide, we're also starting to call this like a market positioning guide as well. Like here's how we
Yeah.
position
Yep.
this thing to this ICP in this situation on this channel, right? Like you're adding so much more information to these positioning guides than what we've typically thought about in the past of here's our brand platform in terms of visuals and logos and a mood board
Mhm.
and maybe like one slide worth of position. And it's like, no, now if you really want to have your humans and your AI teammates be enabled at scale to amplify this expression of your brand across all these channels to
Well
that
done.
person in a tailored way, it's like
Yeah.
this is what it takes, right? And so I think that why to bring it back like full circle, that's why this expression phase is so important.
Yeah, yeah, we define all of that up front. To click like a layer deeper in that, like our AI tools that our bloggers work with specifically are informed by Google's EAT guidelines and our
Mm,
own internal answer engine guidelines, so that the blog articles we are publishing are optimized for those channels. Where the social media guidelines that they have go down to even like the individual social channel level.
mm,
So there are guidelines for LinkedIn and specifically text-based content versus carousels that are showing higher reach and engagement. Um, Up until like March of last year, vertical video did very well on LinkedIn. So we were doing a lot of video clips. It stopped being favored by the algorithm. So we changed our style guide to say like, hey, when you're starting to write your LinkedIn content, these are the formats that are going to perform best. So you have to get really granular because content has to be in the native format on the channel for it to perform. Like we know this as consumers, right? Like if you're scrolling your LinkedIn feed, there's certain content types that you're interested in and some others you scroll past pretty quickly.
yeah.
Yeah,
So, how do you at HubSpot keep your brand style guide? This kind of like gets into the evolve stage of the loop a little bit. But
sure.
how I'm curious, just like how you keep evolving specifically the expression of your brand.
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say the foundational elements don't change very much. Like we don't change like logos, fonts, iconography, photography. We change the inputs on like the content and the campaigns. It does. There's a couple of things. One is like built in the tool. It'll actually, I mentioned those recommendations are going to start to show up. It'll start to automatically say, hey, here's what I think your subject line should be. Like we're starting
Mm,
to get to that point. Um, for our teams, we don't like wait until the end of a month or a quarter. We actually do it on a rolling basis. So for that LinkedIn example I gave, like our social media marketer was just like, hey, like these are the two formats that are working really well. We go back to our knowledge base for the AI tool and we just update the file and then it
mm.
automatically updates across the board. So I think that's really important for teams too, is like you don't have to, I don't know, wait till the QBR and present to everybody around this is what's working. You just update it on the fly. You make sure that the AI knowledge base is up to date, and that makes sure that all your other communications going forward are following those formats.
Do you have a cadence for like the unstructured data that you mentioned, like call transcripts and things like that? Do you have a cadence at all
Mm.
for which you like will go then update that knowledge regularly for like how what your best customers are saying or what those closed deals were in the last quarter, what they cared about? Do you go back and update like the positioning brain of your
Yeah, there's a team at HubSpot who maintains a Claude skill specifically for that.
mm,
And they have access to the transcript database. And essentially, as like a marketer on the content team, all I have to do is go to that. I think it's a Claude project, not a skill. Go to that Claude project and ask it a question, and it'll give me the answer. So, a tangible example, I'm really interested if anyone who calls our sales team mentions that they've ever heard My First Million. It's one of our popular podcasts. So I can go to the Claude project and be like, hey, how many calls in the last month mention My First Million? And it'll tell me, which gives me just a sense of like, hey, is that content program driving awareness in the market? So that's generally how we do it. I believe they're maintaining it on a regular basis, but I'd have to ask them.
Yeah. Well, that's a good tip though too, is just to kind of have those prompts that you use the connector for on a regular cadence. I'm a big
Yeah,
fan of reminders personally for that kind of stuff. Otherwise, you just forget to do it.
sure.
For AI agents, who knows? Somebody out there probably tell me if you have an AI agent that can do that kind of thing. So we have a few minutes left here. I have two questions left. The last one, is going to be an elevator pitch for Experience Inbound. But before we get to that, what if for anybody who's listening or watching this recording back, if their team wants to start implementing the express stage specifically of the loop tomorrow,
Hmm.
because like we said, that's kind of the foundational if you're going to start trying to implement loop marketing as a model so that you can execute your marketing at scale
Sure.
effectively today. It starts with Express. And so what are the first three things you would tell that marketer to do tomorrow to start implementing the Express stage?
Yeah, I think you have to essentially establish those building blocks I mentioned. So first thing is talk to some customers, right? I think that that's important a lot of times as marketers. I think we lean on the data and our own assumptions and what we want people to think about our products. And you get a lot more from just talking to people. So first thing I would do is, talk to your top 5 customers and ask them those questions around why do you choose us? What are your day-to-day pain points? Can I, just jot down your title, years of experience, et cetera? You might be able to get some of that from their LinkedIn profile and just build those building blocks. So first, like, who am I marketing to? So create that ICP. The second is, I'm sure we all have a foundational style guide. So like just go through and make sure that you have all the inputs that you need for a style guide. So your mission, your messaging architecture, your supporting data points for those messages, your colors, your fonts, your photography, your icons, all that. And then I showed that brand kit, and I know it is a pitch for it, but it's a pretty incredible tool where you're just plugging in all those things, and so they're not living in separate documents in a file somewhere or in an email inbox. Like they all go in there. Once you load it in there, you'll start to see the HubSpot tool start to make recommendations based on this new data and context that it has. So that's the first thing. Talk to customers, gather all the information you need, and then leverage the tool.
Perfect. Now you've got a to-do list for everyone listening.
Yeah.
Um, so for those who don't know, just to explain what Experience Inbound is that we've mentioned a few times. So that is Wisconsin's premier marketing and sales conference is the tagline. And Weidert Group and Stream Creative, who are two longtime HubSpot partner agencies in Wisconsin, we host that. This is going to be, Greg can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's going to be our 12th or 13th year. And so Kyle is going to be coming. He's going to be leading a breakout session. And Kyle, can you just give us a quick 30-second pitch for your breakout session, which the title of it is The Loop, a Modern Marketer's Guide to Scalable Success. So what can people what can people expect to get out of your breakout session at Experience Inbound?
Yeah, yeah. So my opening line in the presentation is the internet we built our playbooks on is gone. And so we're going to be able to like dive into the market research that HubSpot was able to pull over the last couple of years and then start to bring forward what are the trends we're seeing, like how are buyers finding information to make their decisions. And then I shared like one example today within this express phase. I'll walk through each step of the loop framework and an internal case study from HubSpot. So, what was the problem we were trying to solve? What are the tools we used? How did we solve it? I'm an operator. I'm a very like tactical person, so we'll be able to go through each phase of the loop and then the tools and how we're actually building it at HubSpot. So whether you're, just building that Express foundation or you're really interested in how do I build like a multi-channel promotion strategy, we'll have all that in there.
Perfect. Can't wait for it. For those who are wondering, you can visit experienceinbound.com to see the full agenda. Kyle is but one of 9 breakouts that we have during the day to choose from. And then we also have Amanda Natividad from SparkToro. She's coming. She's going to be one
The
of our
best.
keynotes. So you get to pick her brain there too, Kyle. I know I'm excited to do that. And
Yeah.
it's going to be April 28th in Milwaukee or April 29th in Green Bay. So check that out. And thank you so much for Kyle for joining us today and for coming to Wisconsin next month. Can't wait to meet you in real life.
Yeah, same here. Thanks for having me. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.